Here at the Institute for Community Studies, we've been working with UKRI for some time on citizen science, and we were delighted to be with them and the FSA for today's event. We would not have been doing this had it not been for the support that Helen Goulden, Chief Executive of the Young Foundation, of which the Institute is part, has given for a very long time on this topic. And I was just going to invite Helen to say a few words, her observations on today's discussions, but also her reflection on the opportunities for participatory approaches more generally, and for the role of citizen science and policy, for example. But Helen, I'll hand over to you at this point.
Thank you. And look, we've got 5 minutes to go before you'll return to your news feeds and find out what on earth has been going on in the UK today. So I'm not going to keep you beyond then, and perhaps make a couple of points, and I will skim through because I really don't want to keep you longer than 1:30, and there's quite a lot that I could say. I think the biggest, let's start by saying essentially, we know that there is, you all probably live and breathe citizen science, but out there in the world, it isn't as well. The word is known, but it's not as socialized. But you see much more mainstream questioning now in different parts, different sectors, about who's involved in the creation of knowledge, what their role is beyond that of subject when they are involved, and particularly who that knowledge is seeking to serve. And there's some really massive amounts of thoughtfulness that I've seen over the course of the day on this in relation to equity, power, access, some really interesting thoughts there. And I'm personally very motivated by some of the subjects where we are looking at existential issues like climate change or antimicrobial resistance. So, the Lancet reported earlier this year that AMR was now the leading cause of death worldwide. And if we're helping understanding and enabling people, families and citizens to be part of a process of tackling that and other kinds of problems through what might seemingly look like quite everyday activities, like examining a lettuce, as we heard this morning, I think that's quite phenomenal. And I think Helena made this really interesting point this morning about that we see examples of citizen science both in turning towards scientific endeavours and very social directions of the world, but actually it's valuing both of those things and encouraging that kind of plurality of focus and the different roles that citizen scientists can take within that. That's really quite fundamental to its flourishing. And as Stuart fed back just now, even the societal impacts and implications for a researcher in their scientific research in terms of pollution, for example, incredibly important. So 3 small points. The first really, which is about that we should all be consistently and loudly talking about the impact of this work. That is absolutely fundamental. It underscores a couple of things that have been said. Not just about sort of the impact of the people involved or the academic joy that comes from trialing these new and really interesting approaches, but really centering what changes out there in the world as a result of doing this in this way. We heard Mark from NASA saying citizen science saves lives because of the landslide reporter. Now, however that impact message manifests for you, centering it is absolutely crucial to policy engagement, of pricking up of ears of people that don't know about your work, and also, as someone else said, securing funding. The second point is really about the wider benefits are when you start looking across the fields of citizen science, not just the project. So we know that knowledge and evidence doesn't change minds. In fact, we know that the presentation of facts that go against what people believe can actually entrench those opposite views. It doesn't untangle them. But building curiosity, engaging people in conversation, engaging people in learning, active research, and crucially connecting your individual efforts to some big endeavour. We don't have so many opportunities now in our society to connect our individual efforts with a big story of change. And I think citizen science definitely does do that. More people asking more questions about how the world works and how we can make it better, fundamentally a good thing. And my last point is about that really, although I'm sure you see bits of this in your work, this citizen science is actually just part of a much, much bigger story about more plural, distributed ways of working and involving citizens and communities. So if you go and wander through the corridors of any local authority, local council, NHS trust, major civic institution, they're all talking about system change. They're all talking about community involvement. They're all talking about mutual accountability, collective funding, collective impact. And that's really about requiring us to work in very different ways that we don't really know quite how to do. And if that's true, then we have to engage in lots of quite experimental collective activities, participatory ways to uncover new knowledge and take action together. Now, that capacity can be built in a number of ways, but it can certainly be built through citizen science and participatory forms of research if we choose to hold that framing for it. So I really hope you've enjoyed today. I'm just so brilliantly proud of and love, UKRI, FSA and ICS for putting on this sort of event. All of the speakers have been brilliant. Encourage you to engage with us. We've got another event on the 16th of November. If we were all in a big room, we would be clapping loudly in appreciation of all of our contributions, whether you've been a participant or a speaker. So before we just go, can you please just either take yourself on mute, clap your real hands or your virtual hand, and say a big thank you to UKRI, FSA, ICS, Richard for brilliantly co-pairing, and your good selves for being such brilliant participants. And we'll see you again. Thank you.